Hello everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. As you guys know, I love anything to do with engineering or technical things. And if you really appreciate how a car is designed, then you will love the Mazda CX-70, which is almost identical to CX-90. And I know that the naming is a little bit confusing, but a little bit more on that later on. For now, what I want to point out is how much effort Mazda has spent in terms of creating a beautiful vehicle like the CX-70. And I'm going to tell you right now that this might be the best engineered two-row SUV in this market because of many things that they've done that no one else would bother doing, even including Toyota. So for example, when they designed the sheet metal for this Mazda CX-70, they wanted to make sure that all of the panels, the alignment, and then the actual panel quality exceeds anything else out there, even if you compare it to something much more expensive than the CX-70. So not only do we get a ridiculously good panel quality and alignment, which is 2.9, almost 2.8 millimeter there, 2.9, 2.8, and then 2.9 millimeter all the way. Yeah, pretty well 2.9 and 2.9 millimeter. Can you imagine a car in this price range, or for that matter, any car in any price range, able to create a panel alignment that's less than 3 millimeter? That's unheard of. Even in a Lexus territory, you can't get that. But also, the alignment and the panel fit is completely aligned and is perfect. It is absolutely amazing in terms of what Mazda has done. And if you look carefully, it's a little bit hard to see maybe in the camera, but what they've done is what we call the zebra effect. And if you look at it at the right angle, you can see like these zebra lines coming through the fenders, along here as well. And the ones over here, also zebra lines over here and zebra lines over here. They actually took their time to engineer panels in a way that the contour and the curvature will reflect the light a certain way. As far as I know, no one else has done that, even if you include Lexus, as I mentioned. But Mazda took that time, and so you can see this line from here, this angle right here, I can see it coming from here and then going all the way across, reflecting off and coming down here. And that kind of a beauty in terms of sheet metal design, sheet metal manufacturing is again unheard of, and I really appreciate that Mazda has done that. They also designed their fixtures a little bit different, and that is the manufacturing devices that hold these panels together. And they have spent enormous amount of time to fine tune and adjust and calibrate those equipment. And that's why you end up with this really, really small gap and very, very aligned panels. Again, this is something that is very difficult to do. And most manufacturing companies just won't spend the time to get to this level of accuracy because, as you know, many manufacturers don't really emphasize this kind of quality. So I'm hoping that you can see that line. I think reflecting off here, you might be able to see that zebra line. And I dare you try doing that with any other brands or any other cars out there, and you just won't find it. Another thing to keep in mind is the paint. There are 3 colors that Mazda offers in the CX-70, CX-90 lineup that uses a special technique. And this one is called Soul Red, which is not just a bright kind of candy red color, but also if you look carefully, and my unfortunately paint is a little bit dirty right now, the actual reflection of light off the paint is different than other metallic paint. And that is because Mazda spent the time making the flakes smaller and smaller compared to other metallic paint. So most metallic paint has a very large flakes, and so they don't look as even. But Mazda actually made sure that each of these flakes inside the paint is really small. And in case you didn't know, when you paint the car with metallic paint, they actually do put metallic flakes in there. That's how you get the metallic effect. But in the case of Mazda, you can barely see the flakes because it's tiny and it's spread more evenly. And that's why you get this really deep color that, again, you won't get it in most other manufacturers. Even if you compare to a Lexus, I find the paint job on the Mazda units, both the CX-70 and the CX-90, to be perhaps the best in this market. Definitely in this price range, you won't find anything that has a better quality for manufacturing in terms of paint or body finish or just the overall fit and finish, because Mazda spent that amount of time engineering and manufacturing to a very high standard. What else can I tell you? Well, you might wonder, what is the difference between CX-70 and CX-90 other than missing third row of seat on the CX-70? Well, it's not obvious, but they did make some changes, such as blacked out grille, and this design is a little bit different. This part is also a little bit different, and if you actually go to the back, they also made some changes, including the bezel here. That's also a little bit different, this part of the design. It's quite a subtle change, a little bit more blackout trims as well. But other than that, the CX-70 and CX-90s are basically identical, same dimension, same interior, same engine, same powertrain, but the combination of color, features, options, and so forth are different for CX-70 compared to CX-90, so you might want to take a look at it and see which one fits you better. Also keep in mind the Canadian spec and American spec is also different, which makes it a little bit confusing, but regardless of which country you're buying, you can get either the base 3.3 liter inline six engine, which is a 6-cylinder engine, which is amazing, or you can get a high output inline six, as I have in this model here, which is the top of the line Signature Series. And then you can also get plug-in hybrid model, which is a naturally aspirated engine made it to a hybrid system, and that one is also a very beautifully designed vehicle. Keep in mind that all Mazda CX-70 and also CX-90 also has a mild hybrid system, which means that in addition to the inline 6-cylinder engine, there is a mild hybrid system that kicks in to help propel the car forward from a stop, so that starts off very smoothly and also helps with acceleration. So that's something to keep in mind. So let's take a look inside now. Okay, so now I'm inside the CX-70, and as you can tell, it is identical to CX-90, and so there are really no difference in terms of design, except the fact that we end up with 2-row seats instead of 3-row seats. Although keep in mind that if you get the CX-70, you get bench seat in the rear, which means you can have 5 people in the car with a full cargo available in the rear. But if you get CX-90, it's actually captain seats. You end up with a 4-person seating. So there is some difference in terms of the seating arrangement as well. But other than that, you really just have to decide whether you need just a 2-row seat or 3-row seat. And then in Canada, CX-70 is a little bit cheaper than CX-90, but not by much. In the US, it's almost same pricing. So those are some of the factors you need to keep in mind. But coming back to the interior, I'm gonna say this over and over again, but honestly, Mazda is creating a car that is in the same level as some of the top of the line Lexus cars. If you look at the, let's say, Lexus TX, for example, or even my Lexus GX, this one actually looks even more luxurious with this beautiful suede finish on the dash, excellent material. I mean, look at these gaps. I can't even put anything in here because the gaps are so tight. Each of the plastic is well made. There's not a squeak or rattle when I'm driving this vehicle. Thankfully, not too many glossy black finish, in fact, very little. And the overall finish and the texture and the selection of materials is truly world class. You get actual soft plastic here. Most Toyota and Lexus models now use hard plastic here, and even here is soft material. So very high quality look all around, the stitching, the two-tone finish on the steering. I mean, what can I say? For $60,000 or so in Canada, this is an unprecedented level of luxury that you get for this price. So I think the value is obviously there. You get a full digital panel, you get a well-organized infotainment system, except for one major issue which I keep pointing out, is that in Apple CarPlay, this becomes a touch display, but in any other mode, you can't use your hand. And even though it's a bit of a reach, I still want to be able to just reach out and sometimes manage my menu here. So that is that one unfortunate thing. I'm not sure why Mazda is so stubborn about this. Although there's nothing wrong with using it this way, it's actually very easy to control. I still think it should be full 100% touch panel. That's my view anyway. You get all the buttons for temperature control, HVAC. You get also lots of controls on the steering. So that's the good thing. Nothing is hidden behind the infotainment system, and the interior is absolutely beautiful. Seats are comfortable, well designed, good headroom, good leg room, and you get a lot of cargo space because on the CX-70 you have a CX-90 size body, but without the extra 3rd-row seat. And so if you want to carry a lot of cargo, this is the one to get. Now let's take the thing for a drive, which is the best part of a CX-70. Okay, so I'm now driving the CX-70, and this is the biggest difference between CX-70 and also CX-90 compared to any other brand's 2 or 3-row SUVs, because the drivability, the fun to drive factor, the steering feel, the handling is all 1 or 2 notch above anything out there, at least in this price range. So if you were to compare this to, let's say, Toyota Grand Highlander, or let's say Nissan Pathfinder, or even compare to some German brands such as Volkswagen Atlas, this thing has a sharp steering that no one else can replicate. If I move my steering like this, left and right, it moves right away. It's got almost a sports car feel to it, but also the feedback of the steering in terms of what I'm feeling my hands from the road is exceptional. I can kind of feel exactly which way the steering is pointed. I can feel the road surfaces. Almost feels like hydraulic power steering from the past. Obviously, it is electric power steering, but the general feedback and the general feeling is that of hydraulic power steering, especially when compared to many other brands. So for example, if you compare the Toyota Grand Highlander, which I do like a lot as well, that one has a steering feel that's a lot more numb, it's a lighter feel, and maybe in some way it's a little bit more comfortable, but since I love driving and I appreciate sportier cars, this is the one for me. So if you're asking me right now, which 3-row or 2-row SUV I will buy, in a heartbeat, I will buy the CX-70 or CX-90. In my case, we don't have kids, so I would go with the CX-70, a little bit less weight in the back, a slightly sportier feel perhaps, and I absolutely love it. So if you actually cherish driving feel, if you enjoy driving, then don't bother looking at anything else. None of the other Japanese or Asian automakers is able to replicate this kind of feel. And that is my number one thing. But also, this one is an inline six. So it still is a 6-cylinder engine. It's also rear-wheel drive bias, which means that this basic architecture was designed to be rear-wheel drive, and then they've added the system to allow 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive to work with this vehicle. Compare that to many other automakers, which is based on front-wheel drive chassis, and therefore it is front-wheel biased, which means that there's a little bit more torque and power going to the front wheels versus rear under normal driving conditions, whereas in the CX-70 and also in the 90, it's a rear wheel bias, which means there's more torque going to the back under normal circumstances. So it's always going to have the right balance and right feel in much the same way BMWs and some other German manufacturers have done, because many of those vehicles are also rear-wheel drive design, and that is one big difference between the CX-70/90 compared to other Asian automakers. None of them makes a rear-wheel drive chassis design, and also many of them have now given up on 6-cylinder engine, and they have replaced them with turbo 4s, but thankfully this one we still get 6-cylinder. It's also inline 6, which is a better design than V6 engine when it comes to performance. It has a more linear feel, very progressive feel, and if I step on the gas like this, it's a little bit louder perhaps, but you get a really good progressive feel from the engine that you just cannot get in a V6 design. So I love the inline 6 design of this CX-70. Plenty of power and torque, especially for the high output version, which is this one. And because this also has a mild hybrid system, when I come to a stop like this and I step on the gas, it has a very natural start because the engine and the electric system is working together to get it up and running, so that you don't get that sudden start of engine as you do in many other non-hybrid systems. Keep in mind that it is not a full hybrid system, so it's not switching back and forth between electric motor and engine, but the electric motor is assisting the engine in circumstances where it can propel the car forward a little bit more smoothly. So just to clarify, compared to other Japanese automakers or other Asian automakers models, this one have a different design because it's an inline 6. It's still a 6-cylinder. It has a mild hybrid, but also it has a very beautiful steering feel that kind of mimics hydraulic power steering from the past. And the transmission is also well done. It's 8-speed automatic. I know they had some problem with the calibration before in the CX-90, but they've redesigned the software and they've recalibrated. And you know what? They things shift really smoothly. So overall, I give solid A+ for all things to do with the driving feel of a CX-70. And I dare you find another vehicle in this price range that can match the performance of the CX-70. So how do you decide among so many different models that are offered in this price range? Well, if you value performance in terms of handling, steering feel, engine feel, and then the overall chassis design, then don't bother looking anywhere else. At least in this price range, the CX-70 and also the CX-90 wins hands down compared to vehicles like the Toyota Grand Highlander. If you want the maximum comfort, then maybe not, because the CX-70 rides pretty stiff. I like it because I like sportier feel, but if you want the maximum comfort, something like a Grand Highlander provides a little bit smoother ride. Although there's nothing wrong with the ride of the CX-70, it's still very smooth, just like it's firmer than its competitors, although that means the ride is also very stable. If you want maximum fuel efficiency, again, you might want to look at plug-in hybrid. So Mazda offers that, which will be the CX-70 plug-in hybrid. And that is an important point because the Grand Highlander, which will be the closest competitor, doesn't offer plug-in hybrid. It does have the 2.4 turbo 4 with hybrid system. But to get the plug-in hybrid in Toyota lineup, you have to go to Lexus TX, which is quite a bit more expensive. And in many ways, the Mazda CX-70 has same level of quality, or maybe in some cases, maybe even better than even the Lexus TX at a substantially lower price. So think of Mazda CX-70 as sort of a high-end, high-profile luxury SUV with a price tag of a normal SUV. And that's the best way I can summarize it. And for that reason, like I said, if I'm going to buy either a 2-row or 3-row SUV in this price range, Mazda wins hands down for me, and CX-70 is the one I will pick. I hope you found my car reviews helpful, and if so, please give me a thumbs up, make some comments, and if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.